How does Michael Malone get the most out of this roster? It's a short rotation, but there's a lot of options there. How do they do that? Is Peyton Watson a small forward? He thinks so. We'll talk about whether that's his long-term future or not. Plus, it's time, week before the season, final Christian Braun at the starting two-guard spots. All that and more on Swipe and Gripe on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Friday, getting you set for the weekend. Hope your week has been great. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. You can catch me on Tuesdays on Locked On NBA. I'm joined by Swipa. He's on Twitter at SwipaCam. You can catch him on Player's Choice. You can catch him over on his own YouTube channel, SwipaCam. You can catch him all over the internet as defending the honor of Nuggets fans and this team's chances at winning a championship. You're so good, my man, at the, all right, I see you. You guys don't believe in the Nuggets. You're about to find out you're really good at that. You're like the best out there at the, okay, we'll see. You're very good at that angle.
Yeah, maybe it's a little my own chip on my shoulder type thing where it's just like, I guess being from the city, it's, look, probably didn't expect a lot out of me early on, but you will find out at some point in time, and then thus you found out. So, I think this perspective on the Nuggets is really interesting. Matt, I've been listening to a lot of people, national, local, multiple fan bases, multiple outlets. I mean, I've interviewed, talked to different people, and people are just like, Jokic is the best player in the world. Everybody starts there. And then it's like, but, KCP, the roster, Jamal, Russ, and it's just like a lot of skepticism. And I think, man, I do wonder what happens if the Nuggets start off a lot better than people originally thought. And it's like, do they take back those takes, or are they so ingrained in the playoffs? Like, let me see them do it. Will they do it when it counts for the first time type thing? Is that going to be kind of how the narrative spins if they do end up being one of the top teams, or if not the top team in the West, by midseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, based off of the Spurs example, there was a lot of years when it's like, I think this is the year the Spurs are going to struggle, and then like they wouldn't, and like no, they won't take back those takes. You don't do that now. Like when I get a team wrong, I'm very like, yeah, I got that wrong. I try very hard not. I'm never a double downer. Like I very much try not to be like the double down guy. It takes a lot for me to be like, no, I still think I was right. Like last season, I think is a good example of this, where I was like, I don't know. I think they're going to win 47 games. And now I'm like, yeah, no, Jokic is worth 50. Like I just should have penciled them in for 50. Now, do I think they were as good as a record last year? No, I do not. And like I documented that throughout the season. But I do think if they're good again, it'll just be like, oh, I don't know. Because one of the things I think that's interesting is like, there's this inverse relationship to how I view the team, where the perspective seems to be, yeah, no, they might win some regular season games, but like they're not winning the title with this group. And I'm the exact opposite, where I'm like, I don't know how they're going to get through 82. I don't know how they're going to get through 82 with the kind of wins that they need to pile up in order to be a top 3 seed in the Western Conference. I was like, but once we get to the playoffs,
right,
you can have your guys. I'll take Joker. Like you can have it. Like Mike Budenholzer and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Awesome team. I'll take Malone and Joker. Luka Doncic and Jason Kidd. Sure. Yeah. 100%. I'll take Malone and Joker. Dagnall and Shea. Awesome. I've long been like, this team is awesome. Shea's awesome. Dagnall's awesome. Again, I'll take Malone and Joker. So I'm just very interested in the fact that there's this like dichotomy of like, no. They're going to be okay in the regular season, but struggle in the playoffs. I'm like, the regular season's the hard part now. Like trying to get through the 82 games with this 9 real guys rotation with a starting unit that needs a break. That's the challenge. It's not the playoffs. I feel confident about them in the playoffs. They were still up 20 in the second round versus a very good team at home and should have won that game.
Yeah. I think that people at this point, they're looking at the roster, looking at Aaron Gordon and Russell Westbrook and Peyton Watson and saying, well, where's the shooting going to come from in the playoffs when they get into a staggered half court look, and Jokic has the ball in the poster at the nail. They're not doubling, or they are doubling, or they're sending a lot of help. Who are you going to? Who's the outlet besides Porter and Murray? And I think then people point to Porter and Murray's inconsistencies. But I would say it like this. I think the biggest thing for me, Matt, I've talked about this ad nauseum at this point. I think really the Nuggets title chances come down to Jamal Murray's health. I mean, I think it might just be that simple. Well, but I'm not saying that like he's not healthy. I'm saying if Jamal Murray's healthy, my is more positive spin on it if he's healthy, which come playoff time, if he's healthy, I don't really know who's going to beat them. I mean, respectfully, that's no disrespect to anybody else, but I'm accounting for shot making. I'm accounting for the play making. I'm accounting for the fourth quarters. I'm accounting for the ability to be able to kind of create and dish and dive, and then even the rotation, with the second unit, including all that stuff. I just think that might be the thing that puts them over the top of everybody else.
This is a joke up front before there's like comments, but I'll just say this up front. I finally get rid of Adam, who puts the responsibility for everything on the Nuggets on Jamal Murray. And now I got you just filling that void. No, the responsibility's on Joker. He's the best player. Deliver.
Oh my gosh. Would you please stop this?
Well, but he had 35. Come on, guys.
No. That's not correct.
We should be knowledgeable enough Nuggets fans at this point to be able to recognize the difference when like Joker has a good numbers, not great game, and when he has an okay numbers, awesome, he dominated game. Like, it's on Joker. The responsibility.
Well, no, sir. The Jordan did not sniff anything without Pippen, so that wasn't happening. Magic didn't. In '91, they finally got there. Kareem wasn't there. They got smoked out by the Chicago Bulls. Charles Barkley was amazing in those NBA finals. Didn't have anybody come along the party with him. Hakeem got a couple people to do it, and they smacked. Did their job. I think Shaq and Kobe in 2004, where did Kobe go? Shaq wasn't great, but where did Kobe go? And then we see what happens. I think for me, it's like, I don't know. I'm pretty traditional, Matt. I know you can probably tell from my personality, I'm a traditionalist. I think the best player in the world, it always comes down to you and your play and your ability to floor raise and elevate. But that's not how it works with a big.
But not with my guy.
No, but bigs always need a guard to.
He's not a big.
What do you mean he's not a
big?
I'm saying he's more skilled than traditional bigs, but every big that's ever won a championship.
He brings the ball up the floor. This is the entire difference between him and Embiid.
That's not what happened that's not even what happened in the second half, though, because once you crowd a big, you have to have somebody that can take the pressure away from the rim or the paint. Now, again, you need to shot make. If he hits his threes, Matt, in the second half and fourth quarter, then yeah, you know what? You're right. They probably win game 7. So he needs his jump shot to get back to what it was 2 seasons ago. We can agree on that. But on the other end of this, you still need somebody to take it over the top, which is what Jamal is. He's a ceiling raiser. So, Matt, are you seriously going to sit here and tell me that you understand having an all-time great floor raiser, you still need a ceiling raiser on your roster as a counterpart in order to win titles?
I think I'll say this. I thought Jamal in game 7 first half Joker and Jamal together were both good enough. Yeah. I thought Joker gassed out more than Jamal in that second half. And nobody else could pick him up, right? Like, that was where you needed a big game from Aaron. I'm not denying that you need other guys. But what we do there, though, is everyone does this with superstars now, where it's like every excuse is made, every allowance is made. And I'm just like, guys, like, the crown is heavy. I'm sorry. That's how it works. This is, by the way, is off the rails from what we were going to talk about. So after the break, we're going to talk about how does Malone get the most out of this team. Plus, we'll hit on, is Peyton Watson a small forward or not? We'll talk about all that and more up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. It is that time. Avalanche games are back. Tough loss in the opener. My wife was not happy about that. But with the Nuggets season opener, we are less than a week away. Next week, you have Nuggets. Not next week. 2 weeks from now, you have Nuggets games. 2 weeks, you have Nuggets games. You can get tickets for all those on Game Time, and you can filter out, if you just want to filter out by Nuggets games, you can do that on Game Time Picks and get you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, which is what they've got at Game Time. Curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You can toggle on all-in pricing, so you're not going to get hit with any surprise fees. Make sure to toggle that on so you know what you're paying for. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Friday. If you're listening to this on Saturday, hope your weekend is going well. Okay. So I didn't see it. So we were going to start talking about, before we got derailed by Swipa making excuses, we got derailed. I want to ask you something, because I do think this is like the key question, and I really don't know the answer. The guys all say, and like Jamal's got a great interview with Katie Winge, because he likes and respects Katie, as everyone does. And so Jamal actually gives her a modicum of respect in his answers. And so he kind of talked about how, the path of being from hunter to hunted back to hunter, and about how exhausting it was last year. And a lot of guys have said that. That's why repeating is really hard. And a lot of players have admitted, like KCP said this, that they were just worn out by the end of the season. It just took too much from them. I think they were good through that first stretch. And then I think the middle of the season bogged them down, and they tried to push after All-Star. I've said this a lot. They pushed after All-Star, and they pushed too hard, thinking that they could get separation from the rest of the West, and it just never came.
No one lost. Yeah.
And that really cost them. Knowing all that and going into this season where they have, a little bit of a shorter rotation, because they did lose KCP, right? Like Russ takes a spot in the rotation, but I definitely think that I don't know. I'm especially with Vlatko looking so rough. I'm just like, man, I don't know. Like no Justin Holiday. I just feel like they have less guys. The question I have for you is, how does Malone get the most out of this team? Like, what does Malone need to do to get the most out of this roster? Because some folks are going to be like the other our friends even in this space are going to be like, well, he's got to stagger. The starters can't play as much together. I don't care about that. I'll just be really honest. I care about the number of games the starters play. But what to you is the key for how Malone's going to get the most out of this roster?
Russ, Strother, Sarge, Vlatko, Peyton. I think they all have to play. Vlatko's just going to have to get his sea legs underneath him. When you come back from an ACL injury, that's just what it is. You're not going to be as explosive. You're not going to look as good, but they have to play. Zeke Naji is going to have to play. For me, I just think at this point, you'd already know the opening game with the Thunder, it's going to be like, I feel like it might be like a playoff game. It's probably going to be about that kind of intensity. It's the first game back. The Thunder are the prohibited favorite to make it out of the West. It's in Denver on opening night. So that's going to be a big moment for them. And I think everybody's going to go as hard as they need to in order to secure that victory. But yeah, Matt, versus the Wizards, versus the Spurs, CP3 and Wemby on the court, versus the Rockets, versus those teams, the Blazers that, you want to just do whatever. They have to play. And I think I'm right there with you. It's just managing the minutes over the course of the season. Jokic playing 79 games this year. Let's just probably not do that. Jamal Murray, do you think that Jamal played 59 last year? He got out early in 3 of them because of injuries. Do you think Jamal needs to play more than 59 games next year?
You mentioned this early in the summer, and I was like, really? I don't know, man. I really don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I think the question is, I'm at the point, and it's not going to happen. The staff doesn't agree, and I don't think Jamal does either. I'm at the point of handcuffing Nikola and Jamal. That if Jokic is out, Jamal's going to sit. If Joker's going to play and Jamal can go, Jamal's going to go. Not that if Jamal's out, Joker shouldn't play, right? There's got to be some wiggle room in that. But that there should be a lot of handcuffing on that. Because I don't know how to balance this where it's like conditioning will take care of a lot for injury maintenance, but not everything, because it still is miles. And when you're still taking the hits and falling and all of the other stuff, there's just a matter of the games taking it out of you. And I'm very big on this after talking to players about it. The game minutes aren't oftentimes like the real drag. It's the whole collective thing. It's like, especially on the mental side, it's the whole day routine versus, oh, hey, you got the day off. And like your entire approach is just different, you know? And even if you really need the mental break of being like, skip, you know, don't even come to shoot around, just stay home, just hang out, take the day off, do whatever. Like those days off, I think for the heavy usage guys, I think are really important. I think it's easy to be like, Jamal has to play more. Look at how many games he played last year. I think you need more good games from Jamal, right? I think that there were a lot of, and like his season numbers were overall very good.
Yeah.
They just weren't good enough. It's like you want to get Jamal tries to give you his best in the playoffs, and last year was the first time he didn't. And you have to first and foremost prioritize that. Like he has to be able to give you his best minutes in the playoffs. So I don't have the answer to this. I think one of the things that the training staff has access to that we don't is, okay, where did the wear and tear hit him last season? You know, was it late in the season? Was that really where it was? Was it just like, yeah, there was a fluke hamstring and he just never got right. And then from there on out, everything was messed up. Or was it like, no, like he was, you know, dancing in the red a little bit in the middle part of the season and probably played more than he should. Like Ryan and I've talked a lot about how the middle of the season doesn't have as many games. And that to me is like another indication of like where we're at here, where it's like they should, I still continue to believe that they've got to, I just think that there are games on the schedule where you should be like, yeah, they're just going to sit. The problem with that from this team's mindset, and this is a Malone and Joker, like I would reverse that, Joker first and then Malone, because teams always take after their best player. And then Jamal, and then like the rest of these guys, which is if they've lost 2 of 3 and they just lost another one, right? If they're on a losing streak, they feel this pressure to be like, oh, we can't let this turn into a thing. We got to win. And they're just not at that point anymore. If they drop 2 and there's a scheduled night off because it's a back-to-back situation, 3rd and 4, sit it. Like, as long as you're not scraping for your very playoff lives. And if you are, then something else is going wrong and they got bigger problems. But if the season is as we expect it to be, where it's like, look, even if the national discussion is right and they're not as good and they're pacing along at a 47 win rate, if you look and you're like, well, okay, but the 7 seed currently is tracking for 44. We got a 3-game gap there. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit. You need to maintain that rest schedule for them and not have the biggest thing. I think I'm hoping that they've done is they've actually mapped out what they intend to do, at least have a plan going in, because what you can't do is you can't be like, oh yeah, we'll get them some rest down the line. We'll see where we're at. You can't do that because they're always going to be like, no. We lost 2 of 3. I got to play. Or it's going to turn around the other way. And I'm not sitting. We've just won 6 in a row, man. We got to keep this going. Like, that's what happened to them last year after the All-Star break, is they're like, no, man. Like, look at how well we're playing. We got to keep this going. And I was like, why? Like, rest the Jazz game. What are you doing? And that to me is like where that difference has to come in for Malone.
Yeah, I think when I look at this team philosophically, I think I'm not on board with the handcuffing Murray. I don't know of a $230 million handcuff in the league. I just think that's a part of your contract. That's a part of responsibility. You know, you're paid to carry your weight. I think Jamal, you know, I think him, you know, De'Aaron Fox, like those are players in the similar tier for me. I think there's players that are like around that, and they have jobs to do, and you have to be primary on-ball creation players. You have to be primary guard scorers. You have to be able to play, make, facilitate, play defense. And you got to be able to do it when the best player on your team is not on the court. And I think Jamal, a part of his task this year for me, Matt, is going to be helping to play off of Russell Westbrook in the second unit. And that means more movement shooting for him. That means more screening from him. They're going to be setting back screens or down screens for Jamal Murray to come up and come get the ball off of a catch and getting his 3-pointers up. I think that he's going to have to play next to Russ because I think they're going to have to play Peyton more with Joker, if that makes sense. Because I don't know if, unless Peyton, and based on his conversation with himself and then based on his people's conversation, he is working on his jumper. So if Peyton's shooting 38% from three, then okay, whatever. But if Peyton is shooting 29% from three again, Matt, then I think Jamal is going to have to be able to take that spot because Julian Strawther and Russell Westbrook are probably going to be tied together in a lot of sense. Sarge is going to be tied to Russ. I think Blacko needs somebody tied to Russ, or Zeke if he can find his jumper again. But I think they're going to have to be able to offset Russ's deficiencies because he is going to have such a big role in this team this year. And especially being able to man the second unit, I think Jamal is going to be important to that. So I do think there needs to be some breakage between Jokic's and Murray's minutes. But I also want to say, too, I think it's Joker's job. He's the best player on the court. So he's going to have to do it. But at the end of this, too, I do think Jamal is also going to have to be able to do his job as well.
All right, on the other side, we'll talk about Peyton Watson. Is he a small forward for sure? Is he going to be a small forward forever? Is that just like where he's at? And we're going to talk about the final kind of thoughts on Christian Braun as a starting two guard. All that and more up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I'm on the Broncos this weekend. God help me. I'm taking Bo Nix here to try and win a home game as a dog. They are the most public dog of the week, so that's also not promising. But hey, I just can't understand why there's this much faith in this Chargers team that runs the ball and Herbert's not 100% and doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm getting on the Broncos as a dog this weekend. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Final segment here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us for Swipe and Gripe on a Friday. Saturday, if you're listening to this on the podcast, make sure you give us a 5-star review. Head on over to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Give us a like and subscribe. Send the show to a friend. Holler at him. Be like, hey, you'd like this show. Everyone likes this show. All right. So you were early on Peyton Watson last year, and I was skeptical. And then, like, as I saw him, I got really on board. And now, like, I'm higher on Peyton than I am on any other bench player. Or any of the young guys, rather. I'm higher on Peyton than I am on Christian, even though, like, I've said a million times, Christian's going to be an 11-year vet in the league at least. I think Peyton can be a 3-level scorer. I think Peyton can have all-star potential by the middle of his career. I think all of these things are possible. Now, it's not a good start for him with him dealing with this injury. We saw last year when Christian Braun was banged up, that really hampered his ability to kind of get into the season, and he struggled for most of the year. And then after the All-Star break, just got put in and then made some above the break shots that everyone's freaked out about and overcorrected for. And now he's the starting two guard. But there's P. Watt said this week that he's like a small forward. They're like, that's where he's at. I think in the beginning, there was kind of this idea, Swiper, that like his long-term plan was like as a 4 because he's such a big defensive force, the wingspan, all that kind of stuff. And I think like, as we've seen his career kind of go along, I do think that we're kind of like, I see him more definitely as a 2-3. Like I think he's further between a 2 and a 3 than he is between a 3 and a 4. What do you think?
Matt, do people watch high school basketball?
No.
Okay, he was a guard wing his whole life, and then all of a sudden the Nuggets draft him, and Blacko gets hurt, and they don't have a 4, and then now they're trying to put him at the power forward, and he doesn't have the frame at all. He did really good on Naz Reid in the regular season, but he is a bad power forward defender because he's still tiny. Like, he's not even like in a man body yet. And you're asking him to do things that physically, I don't think he has the ability to do at this point. Peyton is a 3-2. I have said this for over a year. I think Peyton knows this about himself. Peyton is a good enough creator. Matt, here's the thing about Peyton. If you gave me an approximation for what Peyton could be, Matt, I think that Peyton is going to fall more in line with the Paul George, Jaden McDaniel types than he will anybody else in the league. Now, I don't mean Paul George as a player. I think that in terms of his archetype, the on-ball creation, the off-ball scoring, rim running, rim finishing, defense, I think that in transition, Matt, I think he could be a monster in the transition offensively, converting looks at the rim, getting to the foul line, or finishing with ease. Like, there are so many different things I think Peyton's going to be able to add to this roster. And I think Matt, if you told me any of the players, Strother, Brown, and Watson were hit their peak, who would make the biggest difference for the Nuggets? It would be Peyton, bar none. He's already, I think, arguably the best defender on the team. Now, I would say most versatile, valuable is Aaron Gordon, but I think in terms of just pure impact, it could end up being Peyton more than likely. And I just think that if he develops into what he can be, especially at the wing spot, I think that changes the Denver Nuggets' fortune, because I think Peyton, well, they already started him next to the starters as a 2 before it anyway. But I think Peyton's a guy that you can legitimately slot in at that 3, at that 2, should you need to. And he can play next to Porter, he can play next to AG, but a lot of this comes down to his shooting. If he's able to continue to hit those shots and convert 3-pointers, and also his mid-range shooting continues to improve over the course of his career, over the course of this next year, I think Peyton can be legitimately the highest value asset on the Denver Nuggets roster.
Like, I'm with you on all this. I think for me, it's like long term, because you're right about the frame, but the question is just like, okay, what if he does build into that frame, right? Like, I'm talking about like 3 years from now. Yeah. I don't see him making any sort of power forward move until like another 3 years, based off of where his frame is. Yeah. You know, because he's had 2 years of professional NBA level strength and training, and even though he's bigger, he still doesn't like. He's not like, whoa. It's like, oh, hey, like Peyton looks bigger. So I don't see any scenario where but like when he's like, I guess my question for you is like, when Peyton Watson is 26, what position do you think he plays?
3. I think when he's 26 years old, he'll be an all NBA defender legitimately. But then at that point, if Peyton's 26 and, you know, he's worked on his offensive game, I mean, is he at worst like Jonathan Kuminga?
It's a weird comp, but I can kind of see it. Yeah.
I think he's a better on-ball creator than Jonathan Kuminga is, but you know, I think that's about what you would like hope. Like, you know, can he at least be something of that kind of approximation and or value? And I think that he's a 3. I think he can be a player that can bring the ball up the court in his apex, or 3 years from 26. I think he's a player that can dribble in the half court, that can run pick and roll, that can get downhill, that can throw the ball out to the corner. Again, he's not going to be a high-level passer, but can he be a good enough passer to where, like, if he finds an angle and you double him, or if there's too many people in his area and his purview, he can get the ball where it needs to go? That's what I think Peyton is. And I think, honestly, you know, Michael Malone, I think a part of this year is allowing for him to do that. Now, he did talk about this a little bit, that he's going to be a little bit more of a hooper this year, you know, in the practice interview and all that. And so I think it's just needed. I think it's necessary for this team. I think the team is going to need another player that can go get a bucket and score. And I mean, Matt, if Peyton Watson can do that this year at a relative efficiency, that's a big boost to the roster.
Would agree. Let's talk CB, because I think it's time for like some final thoughts. We talked about it on the show. So I think it's time for like some final thoughts, because he's going to be the starting 2 guard, and that's how it's going to go. I continue to believe that I haven't been a fan of the discourse. And what I mean by that is, like, there's skepticism from people that are like, really? Like, Christian Brown's your starting 2 guard? And then the flip side of that has been like Nuggets fan actuallyism of like, actually, he's going to be better than KCP was. Okay. Settle down. Like, Kentavious is an elite shooter and an all defensive level player. Now, there are matchups that you're going to like Christian more in, which is what everyone's over indexed on, which is like, yeah, but like KCP struggled versus these guys. Okay. But also, we haven't seen the opposite of like the times when KCP was great and then Christian probably not as good of a matchup. Like, there's a lot of matchups I'm not going to like Christian in particular versus like really fast guards. Like, Christian's burst isn't the same as KCP's. He's younger. That doesn't automatically mean that he's just got like that level of burst defensively and lateral quickness. That doesn't mean that there's going to be this massive gap between them. I'm not going to argue that. For me, it's like been very clearly like, no, Christian's a downgrade. He's just not like a massive downgrade. It's not going for, because like, I think a good example of this is the opposite with the Magic. They started Anthony Black, a rookie, last year at 2 guard because they just didn't have any other options. Like, they were like, this is the best that we can do with trying to create spacing while not getting killed defensively, because we can't play Cole when Markel's not able to go, or if Markel doesn't work with the lineup, right? And like the gap between Kentavious Caldwell Pope and Anthony Black is like 4 times the gap between Contavious Caldwell-Pope and Christian Braun, right? Like there's a gap there. It's not a huge gap, but it's a gap. And so like it is a downgrade. When we start talking about like CB is this upgrade, that's where I'm like, okay, no, it's a downgrade. It just doesn't have to be like one that is devastating. He's done everything you would have wanted to see in preseason. If the above the break shooting is reflective of who he is as a shooter, we're not going to have any problems with Christian Braun starting at the 2. As long as the shooting is fine, everything's cool. But that's kind of like where I'm at on CB is like, he's the best option they have at the 2 guard. I like the idea of the lineups theoretically with Strother and or Payton at 2 guard, but CB is definitely the best option that they have. And so he's going to start. The starters will still be good. Everything else will kind of figure it out from there. That's where I'm at on CB.
Yeah, I think the justification for Booth was, can we get 75% of what KCP is at 200% less of the cost?
Right.
And I think that's the gamble, and I think he is. I think that they can get about that. I think KCP is actually he's a better rebound. I mean, Christian's a better rebounder. He's a better wing defender, a better big guard defender. But you're right, like versus your De'Aaron Foxes and all that stuff, they might struggle a little bit more. But again, I think Christian can hold up in those instances. My first memory of Christian is when he ripped Jordan Poole down the left wing on the other court, and they ran off in transition. So this is a rookie year. I think CB will be good. I think the Nuggets actually are still going to be elite defensively, if not a little bit improved because of the size and athleticism. But the offense is what I'm just concerned with. Until Christian makes teams respect him as a shooter, I do think that their spacing is going to be a little bit different. But if you're telling me that like he's legitimately knocking down 41% of his 3-pointers and his corner shot is way better, then yes, absolutely. Like then the conversation is radically different. He shot 38% last year. If he can maintain 39% or so on like probably another attempt and a half a game or something like that, then yes, I'm good with it. But Christian has a lot to prove, man. And I think that's just going to be like a part of the story for the first quarter of the season. How good are the Denver Nuggets with him in the starting lineup? And then if they are still the best starting lineup in the league, then I think Christian will have done his job. And this is also, I said, this is like a contract situation for Christian too. Like, man, if he plays really well this year, he does his job, then all of a sudden the Nuggets are like, okay, cool. Like, well, we're going to put some money like towards this direction to see if we can lock down a 2 guard, possibly, hopefully. Now I'm saying I want him to play for his own sake. I want him to play well enough to where that's forcing a conversation now. Because that's obviously in the end what's best for Christian and for his family. And so I hope he does that. I hope he becomes like one of those players where it's like, man, like we're really going to have to pay like a nice little premium for him. But that's going to be all contingent on his consistency, how aggressive he is, how intelligent he is, and how he converts his 3-point shot especially.
Yeah, I'll say this. Like, I think Christian's going to make good money in this league no matter what. It's just a matter of, does he make great money on the next contract, or does he make good money because he's too solid? I will say this, and this is really important. The stuff that bothers me, where I'm like, Christian was completely out of control on that drive. Christian had no idea about that. Christian completely missed this read. All those little things that bother me, the starters do not mind. Like, those are mistakes that like those guys accept and do not think are a big deal, and they know more about basketball than me. So like that's part of the thing I have to calculate here too. Because the starters all have, I feel pretty confident. I have a pretty good read on when guys are saying what they need to say and when they're bullshitting. And I did not get that sense from the Nuggets in any sort of question that's been asked them about Christian. They have a lot of faith in him. Not just faith. Faith is like, we believe he can do it, right? Instead, it's like, no, Christian will be fine. Like, I'm not worried about Christian. None of them are worried about it. And so if they're not worried about it, probably I shouldn't have been as much as I have either. And we'll see kind of how it works out. There's a lot of pitfalls for this Nuggets team. There's also a possibility that they're able to skate over enough of it and pull it together. They do have a good coaching staff. They do have the best player in the world, and they should be all right. All right. That'll do it for Locked On Nuggets for a Friday. Thanks for joining us on Swipe and Gripe. We'll be back on Sunday night at 10:30 p.m. Mountain Time with the new show. I have a name. We have a name for Ryan and I's show, so you can check that out on Sunday night at 10:30 to find out what that name is. And we'll be with you all next week and the week before the start of the regular season. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.